Okay, what is this? MASH season 1 review attempt 4. I had to straight up get my parents to see if there's anything wrong with my internet connection. The draft I decided to keep up in my video just to see how bad the situation was isn't even the only time, by the way. There have been 2 other attempts. So because of that, I do apologize if I seem like I'm speeding through. I just want this video to get out. I literally have already started to work a little bit on my It's Always Sunny review, which I'll still try to get out by Monday. But I've only seen like 1 episode so far, so I'm so lazy. Okay, MASH. Its series finale is the most watched thing I think ever, at least in terms of a TV show. I'm not sure about like news or sports or whatever. MASH is a pretty easy show once you really get into it. It's a show about a medical hospital and pretty much the people working in it. We have Hawkeye and his best friend Trapper. They pretty much get into they're pretty much just troublemakers. You also have their boss, the Commander Henry, his little sidekick buddy Radar, and there's also people like Frank and Margaret, aka Hot Lips, who are basically the no nonsense ones, telling them you gotta cut that out. And it's like, no, we're not gonna cut out. 24 episodes of this. And remember, this was made in 1972, so we really got to see how people got their entertainment back in the day. Does it hold up, or is it maybe not so good? Let's see. Episode 1. Pie. Okay, if you, I'm not sure if you can hear this, but my brothers are talking in the other room, so I always have my door shut for these videos, but yeah, just letting you guys know, just in case you hear anything. Anyway, episode 1, pilot. Hawkeye and Trapper host a party. Okay, so how is this first episode? Is it good? No, it's a 2 out of 5. Honestly, this barely felt like an episode. It felt like a string of pretty unfunny jokes. I mean, what's really the plot here? Hawkeye and Trapper decide, oh, hey, we should host a party just to lift everyone's spirits. Honestly, the plot felt more like an excuse for jokes, or I guess since I didn't really find this episode that funny, given the 2 rating, felt more like a series of just things happening. Don't you just want to watch things happening? Yeah, this episode wasn't really that great. Man, I'm making that annoying smacking sound a lot. I apologize, but are there any highlights to this episode? I think there are a few. The captain, who I later found out was named Henry, by the way, you can kind of tell it was only the first episode because I wrote the captain on it. Him saying, the last thing you want to know when you say, how are you, is how I am. That was a good little nod because that's true. Also, Frank got a needle in the butt in this episode. Therefore, this episode couldn't be that bad. Yes, I do have problems. 2, to market. Hawkeye and Trapper try to keep a nice girl working at their hospital. Oh my god, that's episode 3. Okay, pause on that. I'm an idiot. But I think you guys already knew that if you watched enough of my videos. Yeah, 2, to market. Here's the actual plotline of the episode. Trapper and Hawkeye try to get medical supplies from the black market. There's one thing you can say about my videos is that they definitely aren't fake. It really is just some random teenager just talking about stuff. Okay, so sadly, this one was even worse. I give this episode a 1 out of 5. Yeah, bad episode. I didn't like it. This was mostly just extremely boring. This one felt like it had a little bit more of a plot line than episode 1, but even still, a lot of it really did just feel like not really entertaining things going on. That's really not why I want to watch it. That's really not entertaining to me. There were a few good moments, but not enough to still not say this is anything more than just a bad, boring episode of television that I really can't recommend to anyone. In terms of the few funny moments, Hawkeye talking about Frank's commercial talk was funny. There's the guy that likes licking there's the guy who likes girls' earlobes, which is definitely a sentence. There's definitely a moment. But other than that, bad episode. 3. Requiem for a Lightweight. Okay, now here's the plot I accidentally said a little bit of earlier. Hawkeye and Trapper try to keep a nice girl working at their hospital. To do so involves Trapper practicing boxing. Yeah, I left you a little bit of a cliff note there, but now you finally get to know. Well, how's this one? Better. 3 out of 5. This one is weird. It feels like I'm watching 2 separate episodes here, and I can't tell if that's a bad thing. Actually, who am I kidding? It's easily the best episode so far, so maybe it wasn't so I can't really say it was that bad. Honestly, part of me thinks that because it was 2 storylines, it made it kind of it meant neither of them got the chance to become really boring, kind of like the first 2. And unlike the first 2, the storylines here felt more like actual storylines, not just random things happening. One thing that was established in episode 1 that I didn't really mention because I find it really uncomfortable, and there are some episodes later on that'll help show us off even more. But Hick and Trap are womanizers. That might be a little harsh, but basically, they love women. They love, all that. They play us. So, which initially in episode 1 I found were creepy. I didn't really like it, but in this episode, seeing them both doing smacking sound again, I apologize. I'm not even sure if you notice it. Seeing them both trying to get with the same girl was actually kind of funny, and then seeing Trapper have to try to box was also entertaining. I think what helped is that this episode also had a bunch of little small moments that I honestly found fun, making this easily the most watchable one so far. Still not good, but honestly, for an episode that really does feel like I'm watching 2 separate episodes in either half, surprisingly watchable enough. Don't have much to say other than it's fine. Chief Surgeon Who? Well, Hawkeye becomes Chief Surgeon to the dismay of Frank. Honestly, the episode I have the least to say about, the episode I have the least to talk about with, it's a 3. Honestly, pretty forgettable. Barely even remember this one. Yeah, this is the first real example of the classic formula of, hey, you will see throughout the rest of the season where Bobby, where Frank tells Hawkeye, is pretty much just annoyed with Hawkeye or Hawkeye and Trapper, and it's kind of just them messing with them. This episode it started when the commander comes in at the final bit during like a nighttime. I think it picks up a little bit, but still a pretty forgettable episode. Not annoying enough to get anything lower, but still not an episode you're going to remember anytime soon. No. 5. The Moose. The guys try to help save an enslaved girl. Okay, this sounds wrong, but remember, this show was made in 1972, and the show takes place during the Korean War in the 1950s, I believe. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. But, so yeah, it sounds bad, but then you realize that the episode's actually kind of teaching a good message, honestly. And for that, I give it a 4 out of 5. I like this episode. I don't really have a lot to say about it. Seeing Hawkeye and Trapper, instead of just making dumb quips through the whole episode like they've done before, seeing them actually genuinely have a cause and trying to help this poor girl was actually made them likable for once, which is pretty weird since I think this isn't like an It's Always Sunny situation where you're kind of meant to not like the main characters. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to root for Hawkeye and Trapper, which I just straight up didn't, or at least haven't so far. So yeah, a good episode. The girl herself was also very nice. I was actually very glad to see her feel better by the end. Sadly, though, even though she says she'll work with them by the end of the episode, sadly, this isn't the type. At least in season 1, the season isn't really the type that really does continuing stuff. So we never see her again. And since I actually did have genuinely watched videos about the show while working on this, while watching these episodes just for curiosity, I'm confident we never see this poor girl again, which I'm upset about. So honestly, extremely close to giving this a 3 because it's still not that funny or entertaining, but I think the good message honestly carries. A good episode. 6. Yankee Doodle Doctor. The crew are in a movie. The duo remove before they decide to help make it themselves. Again, another pretty forgettable episode, honestly. 3. The only moment I really didn't like was at the end when they show the movie, and it was all like a really dumb, honestly unfunny jokes. But then Hawkeye comes in at the end and tries to say something serious, and it's like you did not earn this moment. You didn't earn to be more serious towards the end. Both this episode and honestly this whole show has not earned that moment. There's honestly not much I can even say about this episode. It's really not that good in my opinion. Almost too worthy. There's still a few good moments, like which I honestly think has kind of been saving some of these episodes. There's Hawkeye specifically joining the movie, so Frank can't. That was kind of funny. Then we have, but honest, also Hawkeye does a Porky Pig impression, which as a giant Looney Tunes fan, I definitely appreciate. But other than that, there isn't a ton to this one. I can't really say I like it that much. 7. Banana, crackers, and nuts. Hawkeye pretends to be crazy to get a break from the war. Honestly, I'm going to be very blunt. Only thing about this one I like was Hawkeye pretending he's gay. That's the most wild thing to casually say you like, but it was the only part of this episode I found funny. That bit alone carries this one above some of the other ones, but more boringness. It's starting to become kind of difficult to really talk about the show. I think we all kind of know my general opinion. 8. Cowboy. Did not even touch my computer there. Someone's trying to eliminate Henry. Okay, honestly, bad episode. The random explosion was kind of funny, and there's like a few good jokes, but like very rarely. But I think what makes this one the worst so far, even worse than that black market one, is that if your episode is about like Henry, if your episode is I didn't even know what this episode was about. This isn't me not remembering it. When watching this episode, I was seriously confused about what was even going on. Like, what is this? I think there's a character called Cowboy, hence the title, and I think someone was against him, and it involved him and Henry in a helicopter. Honestly, the brief stuff with Hawkeye trying to take Henry to like a golf game was easily the only part of this episode I think is worth watching. Rest of it you can skip. 9. Henry, please come home. Henry leaves for Tokyo and Frank's in charge. Don't have a lot to say, honestly. 3 out of 5. Watchable enough. This one was okay. It's better than most of these, at least. Henry's award speech was decent. Henry's a good boy. Henry's a goodbye to Trapper and Hawkeye, and then later also Radar was actually genuinely nice. I actually kind of like it, despite me not really caring about Henry or honestly any of these characters. Basic episode that switches up the status quo for one episode, but it was watchable enough. Honestly, by the time I got to this episode, an episode as watchable as this one honestly came off as easily one of the better episodes, which I think says a lot about how I've been feeling about the show. Well, 10. I hate a mystery. Oh, I know something else I hate right now, show. Well, a bunch of items get stolen and Hawkeye is framed, so he has to prove innocence. This one's weird. I'm giving it a 2. And honestly, at first I was thinking about giving it a 1, but by the final third, I was honestly almost considering a 3. And because of that, I think a 2 is the best rating for this one. Honestly, the final bit with Hawkeye, everyone in the cafeteria and Hawkeye trying to prove his innocence, was trying to be like a detective, was honestly genuinely funny. Some of the funniest things to come out of this show so far, which makes it all the more disappointing when the rest of it wasn't really all that good. Really makes me wish the rest of the episode was kind of like that final bit, so that way I would be more comfortable even saying it would potentially even be a good episode. But hey, at least it means there's something to at least talk about with an episode. 11. Germ Warfare. The guys mess with Frank. Again, watchable enough. 3 out of 5. I'm getting so very tired. Partially because I've tried to make this video so many times. So it's making me even more burnt out on the show than I already was when watching it. And partially because these episodes are so bland. It's honestly so difficult to really remember these episodes. Even though it hasn't been that long since I finished the season. Hawk, honestly, I seriously have to rely on the favorite moments to really see what about these episodes I even liked. Frank being compared to a wife in drag was funny. Hawkeye's Dracula impression was funny. When Hawkeye was saying sweet things into Frank's ear, Trapper saying, "We might start something we can't finish," was genuinely one of the funniest lines. May even be the funniest moment in this whole show so far. Watchable enough, but not really anything worth really writing home about. Okay, with 12, we have Dear Dad. Hawkeye writes a letter to his dad about how Christmas is for the crew. Yeah. Don't have much to say, honestly. 3 out of 5. Fine enough Christmas episode. Henry having to talk about the loving relationships between the male and females was funny because he clearly didn't want to do it and everyone just making fun of him for it. That was good. The rest of it's forgettable, but again, not bad. That brings us to the halfway point. Yeah. Okay, so I kind of want like using these halfway throughs to show like little intermissions. So as you, especially since we're already 12 episodes in, I think it's the perfect place to take a break. So far, I'm not loving it. So far, I can't really say I'm loving the season, but it's definitely not bad. Like it's not like I could sit through without really hating it. What I wanted from the second half of the show by this point was honestly just me wanting the show to start getting funnier for me to like the characters more. Sorry, I made the post for MASH season 1. Hopefully you guys are able to, because I pray this is the attempt that finally gets this video properly put up. So yeah, basically, so far, very boring. The characters are super one-dimensional and uninteresting. Does the second half of the season fix it? We can only hope so. BFC. 13. Edwina. A nurse gets so upset with the lack of attention that she makes the girls not fool around. So Hawkeye tries to date her so she'll let everything go back to normal. Okay, remember back in episode 3 when I was saying how episode 1 did this whole bit with the guys creeping on the nurses I really hated? Okay, so despite 3 of the main characters, Trapper, Henry, and Frank all being married, they all still fool around with women throughout the whole show. Like, yeah, Hawkeye is a womanizer too, but at least he's single, which makes it, like, slightly more okay, although still very creepy. But now they're dedicating a whole episode to it. Yeah, mediocre. Edwina herself was decent, but I really don't have much to say, honestly. I found this one a little uncomfortable. The opening stuff of Edwina's birthday was decently funny enough, which I think just about barely saves it, but honestly, still, and seeing Hawkeye genuinely trying to be nice to her, even though I knew in the back of my mind he really was only doing this so he can go with the nurses again, which honestly makes him even more unlikable. I don't know, man. Honestly, despite being like the main characters and me getting the vibe that you're supposed to like them, I just don't find any of these characters that likable, and I feel like that's really hurting the show. 14. Love story. Radar falls in love. Also, the guys try to stop Frank and Margaret's romance. 3 out of 5. Honestly, Requiem for a Lightweight done worse. While that one having two separate halves have a different storyline made it feel like something new was happening and I wasn't getting bored. At this point, this one was just another generic episode I have barely anything to say about. Seeing Hawkeye and Trapper trying to help Radar get a girl in the first half was honestly kind of sweet. Again, one of the nicer things they've done for him throughout the show. I actually kind of liked it. As for the second half, seeing Frank and Margaret, there's been a whole stupid running bit throughout the show, honestly, with Frank and Margaret and their romance. And honestly, it's been a really annoying running bit. It's to the point where with this version of the video, I've straight up decided to stop bringing it up because I find it so annoying. I don't even think it's really worth even if you've never seen MASH, which I'm assuming some of you haven't. It gets all you need to know is that it's in a lot of episodes, and it's really, really annoying. Especially since the whole bit is that they think and nobody knows. But yeah, everyone knows, except I think Henry. So, but even then, I think in some later episodes they joke about him maybe knowing. I don't know. Like a lot of the show, it was confusing and not funny. I'm not sure if it's because I'm a dum dum or because the show is just genuinely not that good, or at least the season. And I think it's a little bit of both. So yeah, honestly, I think if they stuck more with the Radar stuff, I could have potentially. I probably still wouldn't have been good given this show, but I think it would have been slightly higher on the list. But the second half makes it slightly worse. 15. Tuttle. Hawkeye decides to use his imaginary friend in the army, which causes a ton of confusion. I like this episode. No, I'm being serious. It's not like the Moose where it was like an almost. I genuinely like this episode. I think the idea of Hawkeye pretending his imaginary friend who's had since a kid was in the military was funny. And I think this episode is surprisingly a genuinely good commentary on how some people can use like their self-centeredness, or at least they're pretending to want to be smart, like to act like they know what's going on. Because both Henry and Frank act like they know who this guy is. Henry more out of confusion and being so busy he doesn't have the time to properly think about it. And Frank, because Frank obviously is always tries to act smarter than everyone else, so of course he'd do it. They genuinely act for once used the characters in I believe a good way. And best of all, I think this episode was just genuinely funny. In one of the MASH videos I watched, it was about the top 10 episodes. This was the only this was the only season 1 episode to get on that list. And given that when I watched the video, I didn't even see this episode, I was thinking, really? I've been watching through the season and it's not really that good. Are we sure this is a good episode? But I was pleasantly surprised. Good episode, genuinely. I'm still going to be a little scared if this is still in the top 10, considering I have like 10 more seasons I'll eventually have to sit through, but because I do still plan on watching through all the seasons, but genuinely good episode. I like it. Well, the Moose was just barely a 4. I think this is the true episode. That if you want to watch an actually good episode and see what the writers can do when they actually start actually really being good, this is the one in my opinion. 16. The Ring Banger. No, I'm not going to explain why it's called that, because honestly, even I don't know. The guys tried to keep a guy named Buzz in the hospital. 1 out of 5. Buzz was not that interesting of a character, and it's another one where, and this episode's pretty much just another excuse for the guys to mess with Frank. Bad episode. The guy saying Frank's a cross-dresser was slightly funny and almost made this too worthy, but I don't think it's enough to really make me like this episode more than just being another bad one. 17. Sometimes you hear the bullet. Frank's back breaks, Hawkeye meets his old friend, and an underage soldier gets hurt. Another 1 out of 5, and another just bad episode. Honestly, just a bad one. I think the problem is just that by the description, there was 3 things going on. Like, as an example, Hawkeye genuinely crying over his friend Tommy's passing. It was genuinely a really good moment, one of the best moments in the whole show so far, because, again, Hawkeye's usually just this annoying guy who always makes stupid quips. So seeing him genuinely show emotion for once was genuinely nice. But it hurt, but it still doesn't work fully because we barely saw Tommy. We saw him like once before he passed away. Not to mention the fact they're forcing in these other two storylines, which are nowhere near as interesting. The underage soldier one was a little okay, but still not that great. Honestly, not really an episode worth your while. It's so confusing because Filka could have been good, but unfortunately, again, especially for a 24 episode season, and when a lot of these episodes feel samey, having one like this where it feels like they try to stuff in 3 episodes that really could have been 3 separate episodes honestly makes me even more upset. If it was only like a 10 episode season or something, I could somewhat get it, but now with 24, man, you have plenty of episode space. 18, Dear Dad, again. Hawkeye writes to his dad, again. Hawkeye being nude and not being aware of it was honestly the only good part. The rest of it was mediocre. That's right. Sometimes you hear the bullet and love story felt the need to force in multiple plot lines in it, but that made it feel like it wasn't really much of a real episode and only just halves of episodes. But they had enough episode space for a sequel to Dear Dad in the same season. You know, the Christmas one. Yeah, they just did that again. Don't have much to say, honestly. Mediocre episode, but at the same time, is that even a shock? Is that a surprise? 19. The Long John Flap. Hawkeye has underwear that ends up getting passed around during a cold night. 3 out of 5. Solid idea. Execution. 3 out of 5. Don't have much to say. 20. The Army-Navy game. CIA bombs drop on the base. Bad. Honestly, one of the worst episodes so far. Just a series of painfully unfunny jokes with a story that's not really that interesting. Really not worth your time. Just a genuinely bad episode. I never felt. I think this might honestly be the contender for the most bored I felt watching a MASH episode, which is a serious competition. 21. Stickety Wicket. How's that for a title? Hawkeye fights with Frank and gets upset when he can't help a patient. 2 stories once again. A 3 out of 5. Can you tell I'm speeding through, especially by this final half? That's not even because of how many times I had to make this video, because from what I've been seeing, I think this might actually be the good attempt at making this video. It's genuinely because I just do not have anything to say about these episodes. It's so boring. Hawkeye gets kissed and thinks it's Trapper. That's one of the few good jokes in this one. 22. Major Fred C. Dubes. Frank tries to transfer to a different hospital. Hawkeye helping the nurse by telling him a pretend story about Frank's childhood was good, since Frank was genuinely being a jerk to that nurse. Rest of it is more boringness. Oh yeah, to be a little bit nicer, I almost accidentally skipped over the part where Frank talks about his past sleep pranks that Hawkeye and Trapper have given him. That was good. I actually liked that one. That part was also good. 2 decently good parts. Don't make up for the fact that most of this was still kind of just dull, though. 23. Ceasefire. Everyone thinks there's a ceasefire and celebrates. Honestly, 3 out of 5. The fact that, honestly, we get to see everyone being, like, happy for once. We get to see, like, a lot of the show feels so miserable. So seeing an episode where everyone's just peaceful for once is nice. And heck, they barely even focus on the dumb status quo thing that obviously makes everyone still have to be in the army again by next week. Another watchable episode. 24. Showtime. Ladies sing while random stuff happens. OMG, this show isn't funny and so boring. I straight up wrote that on the Google Doc. I hope that shows how much I don't enjoy this show. What do you want me to say? It's essentially the third one in the Dear Dad trilogy, because another one where just random stuff happening. Look, honestly, this could have been a Muppet Show styled thing, or it could have had different little bets throughout, and maybe you could even have Hawkeye and Trapper be like Styler and Waldorf. I know this show I think was actually a few years before the Muppet Show, but they could have done something like that. I'm pretty sure shows like that were around even before the Muppet Show. You don't need it to just have ladies singing, pretending it's like a show, while you have a series of unrelated events. Hawkeye getting a water bucket poured on him by which Frank caused was decent. Seeing Frank get the one upping on Hawkeye despite was at least a little nice to see. Also, everyone seeing Frank on the toilet was funny, and Henry seeing a baby, like Radar making Henry see a baby because he couldn't see his own be delivered was genuinely nice. Which I think scenes like this, honestly, are why it's a 2. There's too many actually surprisingly okay scenes to call it bad, but still so pointless. And that was all 24 episodes of MASH Season 1. Time for the ranking, shall we? The fact there's like 5 1 out of 5s and only 2 4 out of 5s, one of them barely even counting to me, is depressing. But still, at the bottom, we have Cowboy, the Army Navy game. Sometimes you hear the bullet, to market, and the ring banger. Then for the 2 out of 5s, we have Pilot, Edwina, Dear Dad Again, Showtime, and I Hate a Mystery, which almost felt like it should have been 3, but nah. For the 3 out of 5s, which is like 11, it's a majority of these, we have Yankee Doodle Doctor, Stickety Wicket, Chief Surgeon Who, Love Story, Major Fred C. Dubes, The Long John Flap, Banana Crackers Nuts, Dear Dad, Ceasefire, Henry Please Come Home, Germ Warfare, and surprisingly, Requiem for a Lightweight. Did not expect that to be one of the better episodes when I first watched it. Then for the 2 episodes I actually think you should watch, The Moose and Tuttle, which is easily the best one. Honestly, I'm confident. I'm honestly a bit more confident now that this will be the version of the video that finally actually genuinely is able to resurface, and I'm happy with that. All I gotta say at this point is I MASH Season 1, both the season itself and even trying to put it up, my review of it on YouTube have both been just painful. MASH Season 1 is not a good. If I have to judge the entire show by Season 1, which I kind of have to, as I've never even watched the show before this point, it's not a good show. Or at least Season 1 is not a good season. The characters are one-dimensional, the plot lines are repetitive, and some episodes feel like just multiple forced plot lines are stuffed into the same thing. It's not that good. Tuttle and to a lesser extent the Moose are genuinely good and are sadly the only episodes I think you should watch. This is genuinely the worst season of any show I've had to review for this video, and I feel comfortable saying that. Hopefully, when I ever get around to season 2 and beyond, hopefully it improves.